Excuse me. I feel so much better. I'm in a better mood, obviously. I just needed to vent. You know, sometimes you just need to vent. Anyways, dyed my hair, kind of half-assed. I was lazy, and I only did the top. I didn't do everything, so whatever. But on to the final seduction of Deepak Chopra. In our lives, a house of light. I think every couple starts out wanting to belong to each other. It's only natural, isn't it? I mean, we're born belonging until we wander off. Elise's voice spoke through the half darkness. The three of us, Elise, her husband, Kent, and I, were sitting outside in New Mexico. The long light of sunset had made the hills stand out in blue shadows, ridge after ridge that filled with gold and then emptied again. The whole question of love is finding where you belong, Elise went on. It's never been easy for me. And even when I met Kent, I wondered where we would end up. Not a hopeful way to begin, I said. Elise laughed. We started out with a hideous honeymoon. That's what we both called it. Rush plans, total disagreement of where to go. And when I finally gave in to Kent's dream honeymoon, which was in Paris, we spent the first 2 nights stranded in a snowbound airport outside Chicago. After such a start, wouldn't you worry? It must have gotten better, I said. Yes and no. It was Kent's voice this time, coming through the darkness. We had anticipated working together at our own small business, but when we got out here, the economy slumped. I wound up spending most of my time uselessly at home with Elise, worked a countertop job in town. It was the worst time to be apart, and the longer I found myself out of work, the more depressed I got. It was all pretty unlivable. They say you can't live on love alone, Elise remarked. God knows we tried, but you bring so much emotional baggage with you when you marry. Particularly us, since we both been single until our 40s. We were extremely hard to please, like the grocery store cat. Oh, this all makes sense now. It's boomers, right? Are they considered boomers in their 40s? I don't know. But they waited until they were married to fix their problems. Kind of dumb. You know, that doesn't make sense. They literally brought their baggage, you know. How do you expect things to work out? Anyways, they both laughed. You would never suspect 5 years later that anything like a hideous honeymoon or troubles that followed had ever happened to this couple. I have rarely met two people who seem so genuinely to belong to each other. Okay, so maybe I was judging. The first thing that strikes an observer is that Elise and Kent have learned to turn love into play. Their eyes sparkle when they look at each other. They laugh easily and find endless sources of interest in their life. Their home in the New Mexico desert is crammed with folk art, each piece purchased from an artist Elise and Kent personally trekked to find in an exotic country. That sounds like my life. Dream life. Seems like fun. I'm about exotic art, like exotic art, exotic countries. It was disarming to enter this home so full of light that at times I could hardly tell it had walls. Every object had a story or a name. Ambrose was a carved wooden armadillo 6 feet long from the highlands of Guatemala. Matilda, a shaggy coyote sewn from brown velvet, sat at the dinner table looking absurdly gentle. Everything in their environment represents an extension of how these two people love. And that's exactly what my house is about. Everything in my house was either made by me, found by me, or modified. So my house is cool. Beautiful. If I tell anyone about you, I said, you will come off as dangerously close to the perfect couple. We're not afraid to claim that what's good about us, Elise said, but 50 entitles you to that. We just know how to survive, can't put in. Meaning what? I asked. Like Elise, I went through a lot of years when belonging to someone else was hard. Part of this was personal. I really had no idea what an intimate relationship meant, and getting close to anyone frightened me. Can see that. But I was also caught in the crossfire of a culture that expects a man to be hard when he's outside his home and soft and romantic when he's back at night. Love and power are hard to mix. We took this as a line of departure and talked about it for the next few hours. I agree, I said, but I think it's more than just being hard or soft. There's a spiritual issue here. Human beings are the only creatures born with a higher nature and a lower nature. At different times, one may suit the situation better than the other. Define higher and lower. Those terms make me nervous, Elise said. This is cutting into my circulation. In the West, higher and lower are equated with sacred and profane. That part which is close to God and its opposite, which lives among the animals. Sex being profane is lower. Love being sacred is higher. But in fact, sex and love are processes. There are ways of feeling and doing. In India, it's taught that the same life force of prana runs through everything. In Christian terms, prana is the breath of God, which transforms dead inert matter to life. But even through prana, is it the same energy wherever it flows? It gets colored. As sex, the life force is not the same as when it is love. But why call these higher and lower? Ken asked. Is it lower to make love to someone than to give alms to the poor? Love is love. Ideally, yes, if you could just be in the flow of love, distinctions wouldn't matter. But as everyone finds out, if a man loves his job and devotes every waking hour to it, his wife doesn't consider that enough to compensate for his absence. The lack of love on one side is still painful. Balance. So the question is, how do you restore love on all levels? First, you have to know which levels we are talking about. For thousands of years in India, it has been taught that humans live on 7 levels. Damn. India. These are visualized as 7 wheels of chakras arranged up the body, starting from the lowest chakra at the base of the spine and ending with the highest on the top of the head. None of this came as news to Elise and Kent, who had read a good deal of metaphysics. Will this really get us to love? Kent asked. Not many people in the West are going to plunge into esoteric knowledge, are they? That is so true. People be tripping. It's too magical for them to comprehend. The chakras, That's not where we have to head with this. I said, if you skip the details, all that is being described here is a simple division between the higher and lower energies. The bottom 3 chakras are located below the heart. They have to do with survival, sexual drive, and a sense of power. If we only lived in these 3 chakras, human beings would be fierce, self-protective, instinctual creatures. Above the heart are the three higher chakras, devoted to will, intuition, and freedom. If we only lived with these centers, human beings would see themselves as divine. We would never go to war, struggle for survival, or create enemies. So, why is our nature divided in such a radical way? The answer lies in the heart, the chakra that stands midway between higher and lower. The heart is the mediator, the chooser, the center of feeling. Yeah. My heart. I let my heart guide me. It looks upon the higher and lower energies, and its response is always the same. It loves both. The function of the heart isn't to label anything good or bad. It doesn't judge or reject. Out of love, it blends high and low until something new is created, a complete human being, totally at ease with every aspect of himself. So why do we struggle so hard? Elise asked. Your scheme has a beautiful symmetry to it, which in my experience means it is probably totally unworkable. Who can really say? I replied. The problem is that so few people ever get to test whether they can marry higher and lower. Our society, to be brutally frank, is stuck in the bottom two chakras. Damn. Spit and fire. Sex and survival dominate our awareness. We laud the power brokers, but rarely the men of peace. That's what I'm saying. You know, I don't care about these people who make money. I don't care. We judge the powerless as weak and inferior, and we hand out few rewards for spiritual achievement. Not that I need an award, for spiritual achievement. They wouldn't like that anyways, because people who are spiritually activated don't follow the rules. This sounds pretty accurate to me, Elise said wryly. This imbalance is reflected in a way aggression and violence still come forward to solve problems. This was in 1997 when this came out, and yet we're still in the same circle of violence and aggression. Isn't that crazy? Yes, just crazy. When anything is threatened, it gets activated. That's just how life works. So, how does a person activate the higher energies? What would it take to end a war with compassion? The answer is actually simple. Human beings will act out of their higher nature when they become complete. What we call human today is really half a person. I think I would call them zombies, right? They're like literally zombies, I think that's a good analogy. Pretty much. The only way to become complete is to call upon your heart to start blending higher and lower. It won't do any good to shove violence and aggression out of sight, or to pretend that we can be loving without facing those dark areas in the psyche where fear and insecurity constantly prowl. It was night now, and the sky was full of stars in brighter splendor than I have ever seen from the city, and I'm stealing that. I stopped talking, waiting to see how their perspective would be received. This perspective, sorry. I think I know where you're going, Kent said. The heart brings together two opposites energies, as you call them, until they have no choice but to face each other. Then what happens? Only one thing, I said. You have a relationship. Instead of living in two separate worlds, the high and low must look at each other. Isn't this what happens in marriage? You bring all of yourself under another person's gaze and you see the same in return. You become mirrors to each other, and when you look into those mirrors, what you see is sex, survival, will, emotion, purpose, and love. It's all there, but it isn't whole. The fragments don't completely fit, therefore, you get conflict and pain. Isn't that inevitable? Kent said, asked, whatever. Love is about surviving the wounds another person can inflict and feeling bad about the ones you inflict in return. Of course, that is inevitable, I said, but the question is why we want to expose our vulnerable, fragile, conflicted selves to someone else. Why look in the mirror? The view, after all, can be quite brutal. You look because you want to love. It reminds me of the song from having a brain fart. Aurora. I think it's I Was Made for Love. Yeah. One of my favorite songs, actually. Exactly. The mirror of the relationship gives back love. Not all the time or in all love's purity, but the reflection is there every day. Here's what I think happens in every relationship where love is alive. The energies that make us act out of anger, fear, insecurity, and doubt are extremely familiar. They are like an old dark house we return to whenever things get too hard to handle. It feels risky to leave this house and see what's outside, yet we have to leave if we expect to be loved. That is so crazy that he said this. Thank you for smacking me in the face, Deepak. While I was reading this, I imagined my house, my parents' home. It basically what he just said was the choice I made in my life. My house, my parents' home, has always had like this darkness to it, um, metaphorically and physically. There's not much lighting getting into the house, so it's very dark and like gloomy. And it did feel risky to leave my house for a very long time. I didn't want to, because I was safe. And then it just came to a point where I was like, I'm never going to be able to be myself if I stay in this house. I won't be able to reach my potential. And then I just decided to move with Geo because he offered months ago, and I was like, I don't know, like I'm not sure. And then I was like, you know what? Screw it. I have nothing to lose. Best decision of my life. So we take the risk. We walk out into the light and offer ourselves to be beloved, to be to a beloved. Offer ourselves to a beloved. This feels wonderful. It's like nothing we have ever imagined in our old dark house. Yeah. But when things get tough, we run back inside. We choose the familiarity of fear and lovelessness over a vulnerability of love until finally we feel safe enough to go back and try love again. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty enunciating for some reason. I think my jaw's stiff. Have to exercise it. This is essentially the rhythm of every intimate relationship. Risk and retreat. Over and over, we repeat this rhythm, accepting love and pushing it away until finally something miraculous happens. The old dark house isn't necessary anymore. We look around and we have a new house, a house of light. My house. Literally, like, it is so bright in this house. I love it. Where did it come from? How did we build it? It was built from the love of the heart. Serendipitous. Beautiful. It has silently been weaving our higher and lower natures, blending fear, anger, and survival, and protection into the energies of devotion, trust, compassion, and acceptance. And that's when you belong to someone else. Elise said, "You feel safe enough to live and love together without retreating into the old dark places. That would be wonderful to experience." I'm gonna use orange. Future wish, I guess. Future nostalgia. I like that. Yes, I said, if two people come from love, no matter how much they have to overcome, eventually the House of Light will be finished. This is a project silently undertaken in all intimate relationships. The tragedy is that our culture doesn't teach us to see love and marriage in this way, so not enough people ever finish their house. For me, there's no finishing, there's just evolution. My house is never finished, it's always evolving, and I'm always adding new things, taking things, adding, you know, I don't like finishing, that's like a definitive term. Like it's, you, I don't like that. Never ending story. We sat quietly, our talk nearly done. I had never really spoken like this before. I felt a warmth of gratitude that these two people had created a safe space for such words to emerge. Words are fragile when tied to tender emotions, and to find oneself in a place that nurtures the fragility of love is rare. So that is basically what I wanted to create. When I moved, I wanted to create, and not only in my own home, but with Kind Studio, my nonprofit, it was a place where we could open ourselves up in a safe setting. And that's what I wanted to bring into my new home, was a place where anyone would be accepted and we could talk about anything that was hard, that most people would shy away from, heavy emotional stuff, because you have to process those emotions, or else they hurt you in the long run. And that's why I process my emotions earlier. If you really love someone else, I said, you are not afraid to let that person look in the mirror you hold up. There's no other way to grow, and you are not afraid to claim your share of love in return. Because you have looked in the mirror too, the ultimate mystery of love is that by looking deeply into yourself, you find out who you are, but then the self is given away, offered in love. Ooh. Yeah, I'm ready to give myself away. It's old school, isn't it? Um, but it's by choice, obviously. It's not like I'm getting sold into marriage or something. I do not want to give half of myself to my beloved, therefore I must find my completeness. I agree. To find who I really am, I must get in touch with the spirit of everything. The moments of silent meditation in the beauty of nature, in the practice of non-judgment, in appreciation of this precious instant in time. I must see my life as a work in progress. Nothing about me is ever final. Exactly. I don't think final is the word to use in anything that involves love, you know? It's just a new chapter, I guess. I like to think of it as a story. Knowing that my path is the search for love, I have to devote some time every day to the search. I must place my beloved above myself in order to deserve a vision of her sacredness. Ooh. I must tread lightly on the path, having patience with setbacks and harming no one who seems to block me. I must experience my shadow and learn from it in order to go beyond it. That is a mature man. I need a sticky. That's a man. Can I have that? Please? I hope my husband has patience, because I'm going to drive him crazy. Just saying. I must see all things in myself, rejecting nothing out of fear or disdain. I must remind myself always to look a little bit beneath the surface of things. For a flower is just not a flower. It is rain and rainbows, clouds, earth, and the immensity of space. Then I must look at myself the same way. Who's speaking right now? Is it Deepak or is it the other guy? I have no idea, but I like where it's going. All of this is how we build a house of light. A faint voice calls us from the outside of our dark house. It says, "Can't you see?" I think this is Deepak talking because it's just too poetic. "Can you see the vastness in your heart? Don't you perceive that you are enough, needing no one and nothing? What could be more desirable than being here now, savoring the infinite in the moment? Just to heed this voice for a second is to experience love." Yes, I feel it. To listen to it forever is to experience all of life in the light of love. Then what we lay at the feet of our beloved is a treasure, the treasure of who we really are. About it. Kirena. Sticky. Done. I like to think that we have built a house of light, Elise said. She had gotten up to go to the kitchen. Kent caught her hand in passing, and I'm sure they exchanged smiles in the gently gathering night. They were not afraid to own the best part of themselves, which is always true of people who have learned to live from the heart. I don't even know anymore. I don't think I can go back to any person that doesn't spit poetry like Deepak. That's insane. Now we're on the last chapter, right? In conclusion, you are loved. Can I help you? Hearing the woman's voice, I looked up from the mess of glass, water, and soggy paper littering the floor. Hundreds of people had been rushing by to catch their planes, and I didn't even want help. "I can take care of it," I said. "No bother. It'll only take a jiff," the woman said. She opened her purse and produced, miraculously, a towel. She knelt down and started dabbing around on the floor. I had dropped a carry-on bag in the airport and smashed a bottle of mineral water. The exploding glass had ripped the flimsy nylon, spilling the bag's soaked contents onto the floor. Content, sorry. All I could find to clean up the mess was toilet paper from a nearby men's room. Let me tell you, I have everything in my backpack. I don't really carry purses. Um, I'm not a purse girl, but when I do, I'm prepared with everything. "That's getting it," the woman said. "It wasn't as bad as all that." "You're English, aren't you?" I asked. She nodded and smiled. "My name is Laurel." As she efficiently finished up, I had time to take a long look at Laurel. She was plain looking, with pockmarked cheeks and frowsy brown hair, wearing no makeup and a gray stretched out cardigan. We stood up, and I saw her wince slightly. I took the towel and threw it in the trash receptacle by the men's room. Laurel nodded slightly as I thanked her, and when I offered to walk her to their gate, she hesitated again very slightly. "That would be nice," she said. We gathered our things and headed up the concourse. I couldn't help but notice that she had a decided limp. A very unbeautiful woman, I thought. Why is he saying this? "Deepak, what is wrong with you?" Anyways, and very kind. A very unbeautiful woman, I thought, and very kind. I wonder what made Laurel the way she was. When she got to her gate, it turned out that the flight to London had been delayed for half an hour. We began to talk. "I'm just going home to see my mother," Laurel said. "She's getting on, and she's not so cheerful as before. Ostale and the rain, it's what she must live with, I suppose." I like that name, actually, Ostale. I have to look it up, but my phone is charging. Um, do you go home often? I asked. "Me? No, not in 20 years, if I count right." I must have looked surprised. "Well, they didn't really want me at home. I left the first day it was legal to drop out of school. My family's working class, and after my leg was hurt, I was riding on my boyfriend's motorbike. They just found it too hard having me around. Natural, I guess." Intense. Something in me was feeling very pained. They threw you out, you mean because you were crippled? I asked. That's a bit dramatic. I just use a cane when I have to. Laurel's recitation of these events had been given in a calm voice free from bitterness. So, what made them decide to take you back now after all of this time? I asked. They didn't exactly. I just want them to know, well, what everyone needs to know. I looked at Laurel, whose face became eager. She had decided to tell me something special. A very remarkable thing happened to me recently. I went to a women's conference being held up in the mountains. I lived in New Hampshire doing childcare and the odd thing or two to make me ends meet. A woman whose child I take care of couldn't go to this conference, which was quite a lovely resort, so she offered me her place. I decided to go, just on the spur of the moment. So you see, I didn't even belong there with the others. That's important to what happened next, I asked. You're a good guesser. I like being in the mountains and having such a nice room, but the rest of it, the discussion groups and just such frankly went over my head. Only last night did I work up the courage to go to one. And what do you think? They asked us to close our eyes and imagine a very sad day in our past. It was some kind of emotional therapy, I think you'd call it. So I closed my eyes and imagined the first day I was sent to school. I must have been 5. I cried so hard they couldn't get me to let go of my mother's skirt. She was fussing and telling me not to be such a baby. I think she was quite embarrassed by my carrying on like that. Who says that to their kid? Oh, sweet Jesus. Then they told us to open our eyes and pick out a stranger in the room, any stranger in the room. We were to walk up to her and exchange experiences. I plucked up my nerve and picked out a woman about my age in the corner. I told her my experience, and her eyes grew wide and strange. I had a sudden premonition about how this story would turn out. My skin tingled, but I held my tongue. This is so weird because while I was reading this, my head was tingling. It was really weird. I had a sudden premonition. Okay. She almost stammered, telling me her own experience, Laurel said. And what do you suppose? It was exactly the same as mine. Then I asked her, You're from England too, aren't you? She nodded. I'm Vicky, she said, all excited. Don't you remember me, Laurel? Oh shit. Crying her eyes out. Do you mean to say we had the same experience? You were going to find a stranger to tell it to, I asked. Vicky nodded, and we didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Imagine. That's freaking crazy. But that's how the world is. Like, I've had things where I'm just in some random place and I meet somebody that I knew, and I'm like, oh, interesting. It's an amazing coincidence, I said. No, it's an amazing reminder, Laura replied. You see, I had been getting discouraged being alone and without my family. You can see how it is. And here, this astonishing thing happens, and I realized that I couldn't possibly be alone. You do see? I had to suppress the emotion in my voice. Yes, I said. As amazing as your experience was, the really remarkable part to me is that you know what it's about. Oh yes, Laurel said. It's about God. It has to be. There's nothing more moving than a reminder that Spirit is with us. This woman had been gathered into a web of delicate caring that encloses us all. Though we do not notice it, Rumi was being quite literal when he said, Rumi, there is someone who looks after us from behind the curtain. In truth, we are not alone here. We are not here. This is our shadow. The tragic illusion of everyday life is that we mistake shadow for reality. It is impossible to be outside the web woven of love and moments when events throw us too far into oblivion. A message comes to say, You are loved. So you've decided your mother would like to know that she's not alone, I said. Laura nodded. But you don't owe her anything, I said. I owe her everything, Laurel said. It's just that people forget if the debt lasts a long time. Does it matter that she has had so little care for you? How do I know that? Laurel asked, surprised. Perhaps she can't show it. It still amazes me how often Spirit sends us clues about the real nature of life. This I took to be a clue about compassion, the closest value to love itself. To be compassionate is not to take pity. Yeah, exactly. It is to extend care to others simply because you see their need. I'm going to go into a little rant here. So, as he so eloquently put, um, compassion is not pitying people. That's inaction. Compassion is extending a hand to help someone. That is what people mistake for compassion. Um, when I was doing activism, when I was in the public eye, um, they would see, like, literally, like, I would buy food for the homeless and they would stand there and be like, that is so beautiful. Like, who does that? And I'm like, bitch, you could do it. It's just like $7. Give the man food. And I've had this all the time happen. Oh my God, like, you're so sweet. And it's like, it's not about me. Obviously, it's about the person that I'm trying to help. But that's how people are. Like, they're so blinded. They're somewhere else. I don't know where they are because I don't even know what to say anymore. He says it perfectly. So I just I just do me and I educate myself. But yeah, compassion is not pity. I have never pitied anyone, I don't think, except for one person. And I'm not going to mention who. But all right, most of us give because doing so increases our self image and because we expect something in return. That's not what it's about. Although it's difficult to be entirely honest about that, Laurel gave because she had to. This is love in action, having no doubt about itself. I have like a hair on my lip. There's no question of anyone else having to deserve your compassion. If you have it to give, you will give it where it is needed. I have plenty of compassion to give, but don't make me your enemy because I will smack a bitch too. The path to love doesn't end with ascension as if there were a fixed and final stage. Ascension continues as long as you live. Through ascension, the ideals of trust, forgiveness, devotion, and compassion ripen into a golden harvest whose seeds was planted years before in our first lessons of love. And whatever aspect is revealed at the given moment, they ripen because they have to. I'm just trying to think, what was my first lesson in love? The only thing I can think about is being an animal mother. That was my lesson in love. I used to raise birds by hand. So, I was there when they were little, you know, little squawky, little squishy things. A lot of people would say that you have a right to be bitter, I told Laurel. They're probably people who are bitter themselves, she said casually. We parted company at her gate, and for some reason I noticed that she was carrying one of those dilapidated paperback thrillers the British dote on. The book says a lot about you, I remarked, smiling. It does, she said. She asked. Yes, it says you like to look for clues. I went off to my flight, but this unusual woman had stirred me to write about compassion as the last thing I have to say in this book. I don't think compassion is very well understood. In the West, we have been misled by the word itself. The Latin roots of compassion mean to suffer with. Yet compassion does not have to entail suffering alongside someone else. To be in touch with God's love is the root of compassion. Trying to exercise compassion without this connection will only lead to failure. If I see you in extreme distress, putting my attention on your suffering is the same as participating in it. And the amount of love I can actually direct to you will therefore be diminished. Compassion, to be full, has to be founded on unconditional love, which is not attached to suffering of any kind. I think of all the conditions that could have held Laurel back, her physical limitation, the injustice of how she had been treated, her obvious lack of money. But she was on a flight nevertheless to deliver the message, you are loved. The remarkable thing about how equally Laurel saw herself to others she might have resented. Compassion, besides being connected to God's love, sees everyone as connected to it in the same way. Even if you are presently in pain, you are not without love. Since God is compassionate, no one's experience of pain is a punishment. There is love somewhere inside. Suffering is hard to perceive as love when it's occurring, and many times it isn't perceived as a lesson for growth either. Let me tell you, I did not perceive that as anything for so long. I actually was really hateful towards any God for a very long time. This is where compassion has the most value. It allows me to step in and remind you that you are loved, not in theory, but in the flesh. All of us feel our pain keenly while the pain is present. There is little room for reflection on the spiritual value, if any, of what we are going through. But the fact that the mind is dominated by pain doesn't negate love's purpose. A time will come, a state of awareness will grow that transcends the suffering. Spirit will dominate the mind instead by bringing compassion to you. I can reassure you that you are not abandoned. You are not just a difficult crossroads of the journey of love. And I'm getting emotional. At every stage of love, the goal should be kept in mind. Uniting romance, relationship, and ascension is a code of compassion, which goes as follows. Be kind to yourself and others. Come from love every moment you can. Speak of love with others. Remind each other of your spiritual purpose. Never give up hope. Know that you are loved. If you practice these things, you will be open to receive every lesson on the path and the spirit in which it is given as an expression of divine love. The horrors of the world are undeniable, and few people can dream that they will go away, but they will because love is the supreme reality, compared to which all else is temporary, fleeting, and unreal. The love you seek is seeking you at this moment. Your longing, your deep fantasies about being loved are mere shadows of the melting sweetness that makes spirit want to love you. Why? I wasn't expecting to end emotionally. Damn this guy. You got me. Be honest about your seeking and be alert to the moments when love is showing itself to you. You are the only means that love has for conquering its opposition. Therefore, you are infinitely precious in the eyes of spirit. The messages of love may not be clear to anyone else around you, even those most intimate to you. That doesn't matter. They are meant for you and you alone. Be assured of that. And above all, be like Laurel. Keep looking for clues. And that is that. I wouldn't say it's an end because I always go back to my books. I don't know how it got wet, but damn. Don't regret this book. I feel like bawling my eyes out.
Where's the mop? Not the mop. Soup.
Okay.
What's the soup?
You mean the broom?
Hmm.
In the closet where the washer and dryer are? Can you do me a favor? Can you put the clothes in the dryer for me? Thank you. I'd have regretted reading some books, which was the Twilight series, but this one I do not. The love you seek is seeking you at this moment. Your longing, your deep fantasies about being in love are mere shadows of the melting sweetness that makes your spirit want to love you. Awesome. I need to drink some water really quick. I don't know what to say. If everyone read Deepak, I think we would live in a different world. Anyways, this is stuff that I have come to on my own, in my own way. Especially the last part, that little piece of poetry that he has. Be kind to yourself and others. Come from love every moment you can. Speak of love with others. Remind each other of your spiritual purpose. Never give up hope and know that you are loved. When I was working with people before Corona, that is something that I always mentioned to everyone I met is you matter and you are loved. Even though I looked weird saying it, it always resonated with my soul. You know, it was a truth. You know, there are things that people say that aren't true. You know, they don't ring true. You know, is that a saying? So that is something that I did. And when I discovered, when I saw the light, I was in the hospital with people that I knew were a reflection of me, right? I realized it and I comprehended it. And I was like, wow. So in the hospital, I guess we'll talk about it. When you go into a hospital, a psych hospital, you sign papers. You're forced to sign papers pretty much. And in those papers, you forfeit every right that you have, right? You are completely in the care of your doctor. Whoever rando that doctor is, that's your doctor by law. So I was half there, half not there. Like I was in some weird mind, some weird atmosphere where I was aware of what was going on, but I was also somewhere else. Um, so I signed all the papers, not taking the time to read it because I was in a very depressed, anxiety kind of thing. But I did read one thing that I did not sign, and they didn't like that at all. I refused to sign the papers about taking medication. Mainly, the medication, the list was like this long. It had 16 different medications. And I was like, Who does that? Because I've always had an interest in psychology, which they weren't aware of because they knew me as an artist, right? So I was like, I'm not taking all these medications, and especially I'm not getting tranquilized like a fucking horse if you don't like what I'm doing. So I didn't sign those papers. And that was like a domino effect. So I was in the hospital. I admitted myself voluntarily, right? Thinking that I could leave whenever I wanted to. But because I refused their treatment, they took me to court without me being there. And they said whatever they wanted to say. This person is crazy. She, blah, 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 right? So I was there. I was only supposed to be there for 3 days. And I ended up being there for 2 weeks. When you're in the hospital, they take away everything. They take away your phone, they take away your possessions, they take away your clothes, they give you a gown, no underwear if you don't have any, nothing. You don't get anything except for a toothbrush, because obviously that's important, right? And the hospital is like standard blank walls, very cold all the time, which sucked for me because I can't live in the cold. And I always had to ask for extra blankets, and they were annoyed with that, right? Because, excuse me if I ask for extra blankets because I'm freezing my fucking ass off. So, they put you in a room with a stranger, which is fine because I'm a friendly person. Always a woman if you're a woman, and a man if you're a man. And there was only one community room. I remember everything, even though I was drugged up, man. It's crazy. One little room where it's supposed to be the activities room. The only activity this hospital had was watching the news, which I was like, what the fuck? This is not conducive. This is not right. So, anyways, little old me, 5'2", super sweet looking. I fucked shit up because I was like, this is not how you treat people in any way, regardless of their mental capacity, right? So I was keeping tabs on everything, right? I pretty much was the watchdog in that hospital, in that floor, because the hospital's huge. And what I realized was a lot of things. The people that worked there pitied and looked down on the people that they were taking care of. That to me said many things. As Deepak brought up, there was no compassion in any of those people's, because I looked them directly in their heart. I looked them in their soul, and I saw nothing. I just saw like gross. There was no compassion in their eyes. So, anyways, I ended up making friends with everyone in the hospital, all the patients, and I started pretty much being their psychologist, but not really. I was just being myself. I asked them questions like, why are you here? What brought you to this point? And everyone opened up to me, and it was just like this beautiful moment for me where I was in a lot of pain for most of my life. I really wanted to end my life. But something kept me from doing that. Anyways, so I was there in the lowest point of my life. I was trying to find an answer to why I was in so much pain for so long. Why was I going through all this shit? Why did I have to suffer so much? You know, Pourquoi, right? Pourquoi? So then I realized I was like, oh shit, damn, how beautiful. Um, so all the suffering was worth it. When I ended up in that hospital, I was like, this is who I am and this is what I'm meant to do. It was so clear. It was like for the longest time, my mind has been in the dark. I wasn't paying attention to my own life. I could only see the pain. And then when I was there, I was like, oh shit, I can actually see everything. Like, this is really fucking crazy. Like, this has never happened before. And it wasn't because of medication. Nope. So, anyways, I made friends with everyone. I entertained people, because I like entertaining. I like games. We played games. I provided reading material. I provided games. I provided clothing. I kind of tricked my parents because they were visiting me. I was like, "Hey, I need stuff to read, and I need clothes, and I need games." And then I would just give it to the people in the hospital, and my parents would be like, "Why are you doing that? Your dad bought it." And I was like, "You obviously don't understand what's going on here." I mean, I didn't say that to their face, but I was like, "You don't comprehend what's happening." So, anyways, so me being there, I brought reading material, clothing, games, and things started to change, right? The mood wasn't so depressing and hopeless, right? But because I wasn't submitting pretty much to my doctor, I did not want to do anything that he told me, because he wasn't there for out of his heart. Like, he was there because he wanted money. It was obvious. um, so he kept me there. He threatened my family. He threatened my family behind my back, saying all these things like, your daughter is going to be in a federal institution for the rest of her life. She's never going to recover. Like, all this terrible stuff that no one should ever say to anyone. He said it. And he kept me there for 2 weeks. And then he started punishing me because the only thing that I needed to stay sane, in a repetitive environment, was to be out in nature and meditate. And then he noticed that I did that and he stopped me from going out. He deliberately told someone, he was like, don't let her go out anymore. And that person was the sweetest man that I met in the hospital. I forgot his name, but I think he had blue eyes. Pretty sure. He was the only person that came in and he talked about his life, and he was an addict. He was in the prison system. And he said, very meaningful words that I cannot remember because I was like gone at that point because the drugs started fucking me up. But he came up to me and he was like, I don't know what you did. I don't know why you're being punished, but I'm going to let you go out anyways. And I was like, yes, someone thinks for themselves, and I got away with it. So I didn't submit to what the doctor wanted. And eventually he just took all my money. He took about like $3,000 out of my insurance. and out of my pocket because I had to pay for that shit. And as soon as the money ran out, as soon as the insurance capped out, he was like, "Get the fuck out." Like, he literally signed the papers for my release after 2 weeks. And that is when I had some spicy words to say to everyone involved, the staff. Of course, he wasn't there because he's a fucking pussy. Oh no, I don't want to call anyone a pussy because pussy's great, right? He was a fucking coward, and he didn't show up. But his staff heard from me, and I didn't want to leave. I refused to leave. And then they called the cops. They were threatening me with the cops. They were, "We're going to call the cops on you." And they lost control. Like, I was sitting there, like, saying, like, "Call the cops," And they were literally, like, trying to throw shit at me. Like, they lost their shit. And I was like, "Call the cops." Like, I don't give a shit. Like, wow, you're calling the cops after I've been held prison for 2 weeks and tortured psychologically. Like, what are the cops gonna do? Anyways, they called the cops. They escorted me out, and then I was free. But for many years, I had PTSD. That was something that you know was an after effect of going through that. But I don't regret any of that, um, because it was a lesson. And through that lesson, I discovered who I really was, where my core values lie, and what I really want out of my life, and what things had to change. Perception, pretty much. But just grateful, actually, just grateful for that whole experience. Because for a very long time, I did pity myself. I was like, I'm never going to be normal. And then at this point, I'm like, I don't want to be normal. But yeah, so the pain that you go through becomes useful to you. That's another book. Not that I'm ever going to read that book because it's like a teenage book for teens, right? But it is true. Like, I have made the pain a strength, and I am unbreakable. Maybe. But really interesting how my lesson came about. I mean, who would have expected that? Um, I go to a hospital and I found I found my true calling, my awakening. You know, pretty hilarious actually, because I think that's people's fear. Their biggest fear is ending up in a psych hospital, right? And after they end up in the psych hospital, it's repetitive. It's an addictive system. They keep coming back, coming back, coming back. And I only needed to do it. Well, I've been in the hospital several times, but I wasn't comprehending what they wanted me to understand. But the first time was like the big moment. So very interesting how everything works out. And at this point, I have no regrets. So that's nice. People have lots of regrets actually, but me, no. And that was one thing that I noticed in that situation in the hospital the first time. I felt loved. Like, it was like the weirdest thing. Like, I felt taken care of, but not by the people that I was in the care of. It was different. It was like universal hug. That's how I can describe it. So very interesting. I wouldn't go back and change that experience. It's actually a nice memory for me now. Um, yeah. What can you do? But I am seeking the love of my beloved. Shout out. I'm just being silly. I can't really force anything to happen. So, like, I just have to live my life and read and educate myself. Um, and one day, that the love that I've been putting out into the universe will come back and smack me in the face. Not literally, because that's rude, but it will surprise me. I'm sure. I'm just going to be like so surprised. I'm calling it now. I'm going to look back on this and I'm going to be like, freaking knew it. Unexpected. Never have imagined that person to be interested, and pretty sure I'm gonna die when I meet them. That's fun, right? Have a physical, spiritual death when you meet the love of your life. One of the loves of my life. Because I have many. But that was a great book. That was great. Do I want it to end? I don't. I don't want it. But we can always go back. And I have interesting content in my book. I'm going to go get the other one that we're moving on to. So the next book we're going into is, I feel like this is the right one. You have chosen to remember a journey from perception to knowledge, peace of mind, and joy. Part of the reason why I bought this book is not only the title, but also it says all proceeds from the sale of this book go to Stand Up for Kids, a nationally acclaimed volunteer organization committed to the rescue of homeless and street kids. Even though this was at Goodwill, it did not contribute to that, but you know, it's nice. That's what I was looking for. Where did I want to put this actually? Okay, so there was a fortune in here. I'm gonna put it in Muksha actually. I need more fortunes actually. Where can I get some for free? Muksha. Muksha. All right, so let me look through this book really quick. Because it might be a lot of repetitive information that Deepak went into. I don't know how this person writes. He's not as poetic, I can tell. He's more like to the point. Interesting. So I'm looking at the contents. Chapter 1 is the dream. Chapter 2 is the ego self. Chapter 3 is the God self. Chapter 4, A Fulfilling Life. Chapter 5, Work on Yourself. Chapter 6, Trust in God. Seems like he has a Catholic version of God, which is okay with me, since I'm honest. I like Deepak's version more, but, not everyone has the same perception. So, freedom through forgiveness. Chapter 8, Being in the Now. Chapter 9, Choosing One's Attitude. Chapter 10, Taking Responsibility for Your Destiny. Chapter 11, Dreams, Prayers, Out of Body Experiences, and Meditation. I think we're going to go into this chapter 11. And I don't think necessarily I'm going to read this from beginning to end. I'm actually going to skip around. So, chapter 11, Dreams, Prayers, and Out of Body Experiences. Let's read about lucid dreaming, 256. And he has some poetry. How nice. I like that. We have not inherited the earth from our fathers, but are borrowing it from our children. How nice. All right, dreams. Let's see what he suggested. And I have my DIY bookmark in here. There is much knowledge that can be extracted from dreams. A lot of people tell me they have trouble remembering dreams, so let me first offer a little advice on that issue. By following the steps below, you will be better to recall your dreams. I don't necessarily. I know which dreams are important and which are just kind of just me venting, I guess. If I remember them, that means they're important, you know? Buy a dream journal, keep it on your nightstand, meditate for at least 5 minutes before going to bed, and tell yourself that you remember your dreams. This allows you to set intention. That is actually something I should do, though. I don't meditate before I go to bed. Actually, sometimes I do. It depends on my mood. But I will do that. During the night, if you wake after a dream, write it down in your journal. I keep a tape recorder next to my bed so I don't need to turn on the light in the morning and blah, blah, blah. Learn to recognize that moment before waking when you haven't moved physically, but you know that you are about to wake up. Do not move physically and do not open your eyes. I don't even have that experience anymore. I'm just awake. During this brief period of time, teach yourself to review all dreams you can recall that night. After recalling all you can, your first physical movement should be to open your eyes, then to pick up your pen and begin journaling your dreams. Repeat the procedure every night. All right. Lucid dreaming differs from ordinary dreaming in that with lucid dreaming, you consciously, I spit all over, consciously control your reactions, your actions, and the directions of your dream. In your non-lucid dreams, you have no conscious control over your reactions, your actions, or the directions of your dream. In a non-lucid dream, you are simply in a reactive state. Take, for example, a dream most of us have had that of being chased. In the dream state, most often you don't realize that you're really running from. In this state, you become afraid, you keep running. Okay, so I don't want to add this to the end of this Deepak thing, but I am interested in what he's saying. I haven't had any lucid dreams in a while. Interesting. Actually, my dreaming hasn't been very informative. I wonder why. Suspicious. But yeah, that's awesome. We finished something. Finally. Not finally. I enjoyed the journey. So But that was really great. I'm trying to think of dreams that I've had. I had some pretty interesting dreams recently about someone very saucy, very beautiful, like an angel. So pretty. Um, very interesting dreams, actually. I don't know what they mean. I don't know what one meant. I was like, okay. Well, no, I kind of know what it means now. But, anyways, uh, some dreams I cannot make sense of. I don't know why I have those dreams or those premonitions. I would like some clarity, or maybe the clarity will come later. Always fun, though. Like when I was first getting into my meditation practice, I would be sleeping and or like about to sleep, and it would feel like someone was pushing me, like trying to push me out of my body. That was fun. Um, and I mean, they couldn't. You can't force anyone out of their body. But I did have a astral projection that I had no control over. Like it just happened, and that was pretty cool. I went through some galaxy and met this very beautiful creature that looked like an octopus but wasn't exactly one. Evolutionary difference. And I fell in love. I was like, oh, so beautiful. And like I remember just staring into its eyes because it had like so many eyes. I think like 8 eyes. I don't know. This was like 2 years ago. And I was just so in love with it. I was like, I'm about this. And then I woke up. I went back into my body and I was like, huh, interesting. Why? I don't know. I have no problem loving another species. Does that sound weird? Um, it's not weird to me at all because love is transcendent, transcendental. I don't know. That's how I see it. Duh. I mean, come on. You know, I'm just a girl in my late 20s, single, active. What do you expect? I'm not made out of paper. That's a joke. But anyways, that was a cool experience. Um, I haven't done astral projection. I haven't really wanted to practice it. Mainly because not that I don't care. I'm aware that things exist at this point, and I would like to see them in front of me. So that's something that I haven't really been practicing because you know it is something you have to practice and actively try to do. I mean, it would be fun to do as a way of relaxing from body stress, but I like the surprises. You know, like I don't want to have control over it. I think I have more fun when it's unexpected. Maybe I'll get some in a few days. That'd be cool. And I'll talk about it if I can. Because, I mean, I don't think they. Yeah, I think I can talk about it. Maybe. But yeah, lucid dreaming. I used to have very, very lucid dreams. Now, not so much. And I do miss them, but it's more of like me actively participating in my life. So I don't have to dream as much as I used to. I'm not saying that I don't dream, but I don't live in fantasy world anymore. I live the fantasy, right? Never mind, that didn't make any sense, but whatever. Um, Very good read. Definitely going to purchase his other books. I hope I find them somewhere. Um, like in a thrift store or something, super cheap. Not that I wouldn't pay for like the full price, but I like books that have been passed. More character. Um, Nothing else to talk about. Um, yeah, that was great. Um, Perfect. Perfection. The next one hopefully is good. Some things might surprise me, I hope. I think. And after that, what are we going to read? I have so many books. I think we're going to get into the thick one, the extra thick one. Because it's extra thick, you know what I mean? And it's also talking about chakras and the merge of psychology and Eastern and Western medicine, which is very interesting to me. So, yes, that's it for Deepak, one of his books, until I buy the next one. And thank you for watching.